Cochran. This fine fellow with me is Adam Scher. And we got ourselves a 9-gamer today with Kluber, with Nolo, with Scherzer, with DeGrom, Caleb. We got a lot of good pitchers on this slate, man.
Yeah, pretty stacked slate. And there's even a couple of, mid-range guys if you need to get there that are good.
I would agree. I don't know. Who are you thinking? McHugh? Anyone? Who else?
Oh, I mean, him too. I kind of just totally forgot him, but I was thinking like Anderson and Fried are guys that on other slates would stand out more than they did.
All right, interesting. Pena was another guy, but we can talk about him. Pitch count's definitely concerning. But let's just jump right into it. We got 9 games to discuss. Any weather concerns out of the way first?
Not that I've seen.
All right, let's do it. Philly, Detroit, Aaron Nola, Daniel Norris. Nola has had about 1.5 good starts in a row. Not a lot of strikeouts last time, but he limited the Marlins to 1 run across 6 2/3. Was good over that second half of the Coors meeting with the Rockies. And now he's got a Detroit team that features a couple of things that you'd like to see. A good amount of right-handers, a pitcher, and a lot of strikeouts. Nola's been very up and down this season. For the most part, mostly down. What do you make of him in this start, seeing that his price tag is pretty depressed mostly across the board? Can you hear me? All right. Can you hear me? I can see you moving around somewhat over there, Adam, but nope. Nope. All right. Well, wait till he gets back in. Good stuff. All right. Anyway, I'll wait till he gets back in. Speaking about Aaron Nola, though, you have basically somebody whose curveball and pinpoint command is what he relies on. We saw that return in his last start. Not a ton of K. Are you here, dude? Are you with me or no?
Yeah, it froze. I couldn't hear anything you said.
Okay. Where are you at on Aaron Nola?
I love Aaron Nola. Really good matchup against Detroit.
Jesus. All right. I'm gonna bring in the reserves here. I'm gonna bring in the reserves troops. Here he comes. This guy always on. Josh, can you hear me? He pulled out. Adam, you can't hear you. You're just in and out. Can't hear anything. So can you hear me now?
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I'm almost. All right. Let's start again. Aaron Nola.
Aaron Nola, probably my highest owned pitcher on DraftKings on the 2 pitcher sites. Really good spot against Detroit. Obviously, it's a hitter's park, but it is a park where pretty much every Philadelphia pitcher strikes out more hitters than they do on the road. There's plenty of righties in the lineup for him. There's plenty of strikeouts in the lineup. He's a good pitcher. Price tag's appealing. Pretty much checking all the boxes here for Nola.
Hey, Josh.
We good, gents?
We'll find out.
Okay. Could you hear me then?
Yeah, that time I could.
Okay.
I've been bouncing in and out, just trying to figure it out.
Yeah. Well,
you don't want my takes right now. I'm still salty over Liverpool. I'm gonna be a not fun person for 45 minutes.
What was the score of that one?
Not what it should have been. 3-0.
Oh, you know what? I just went into a local pizza place to grab some pizza, and I hear a guy say, "Oh, 3-0." So I guess that's what they were talking about. They scored that third goal like 25 minutes ago, 30 minutes ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. Well, I heard it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I saw it.
Anyway, thanks,
man.
You
guys have fun. If you need me, tag me back in.
I would say you're on call, but
lucky me.
Don't feel obligated.
I don't get paid like a doctor, though. Later, guys.
All right. I like Nola a lot here. I mean, there are some issues that have popped up throughout like the majority of his season so far, but you're getting him cheap. His command has looked better. The curveball looks fine. And the matchup is just really, really good. So there's nothing to really pull me away from this. He's a huge favorite. Like way more like Velasquez yesterday. Seeing what happened to him is not very surprising. I would be surprised if Nola came out of this with a really bad line. I would.
Yeah, Velasquez yesterday, it was more for me. There was clear upside there, and I think he was good enough that he more often than not does well. But it was also a product of not having a lot of options around him. Nola, like if Velasquez was on this slate at 9K, I would just be like, yeah, okay, whatever. I'll play someone else. But Nola, I'm pretty excited to get to.
All right. What about the other side, Philly against Daniel Norris? Good park. It's not like the weather actually dropped quite a bit around here from yesterday to today. At first pitch, this game's going to be around like 58 degrees. So
Yeah. So in my initial crunch, because of the pitching on this slate, I was really getting to cheaper stacks. I love Philadelphia if I can find money for the bats. I think that they have possibly the highest upside on the slate. If not, it's close because you do have, I think Norris can be a decent pitcher at times, but you just have so many good right-handed hitters in the Philadelphia lineup. Plus, you have Bryce Harper, who is obviously good against everyone, and then you have a weak Detroit bullpen behind Norris. So there's a ton of upside for Philadelphia. You just have to get creative with your pitching because even if you go, like on DraftKings, even if you go like Caleb Smith and Aaron Nola, you still can't really get the Philadelphia guys that you would want. You have to be using, or at least mixing in guys like Sean Rodriguez and Cesar Hernandez. And even then, you're still sacrificing on your one-offs. So you have to be taking some chances on pitching if you want to get a full Philly stack in there. But I do really like Philadelphia hitters.
So do I. I also think, at some positions that aren't particularly deep, like shortstop, Sean Rodriguez, minimum salary, Yahoo, 2,600 on FanDuel, batting sixth isn't the craziest idea here. But obviously it's the top and middle of the order that you like the most in McCutchen, Hoskins, Realmuto, Segura. I'll throw Harper out there. Harper got booed by the home crowd yesterday, by the way, and said,
Really?
oh, yeah, he said, I'd have done the same thing. Yeah, he had an error. There was another missed ball, a bloop single. He struck out twice, went 0 for 4. I mean, it was a really bad game from Bright. I mean, and it's Philly, so what do you expect? But granted, it was also only a couple of people, but they blow it up to make it sound like the whole stadium is booing him,
Right.
When, really it's just a bunch of ingrates. Anyway, yesterday I had a little interest in Detroit. It's tougher for me to get there today. I still think, despite the struggles, that Nola's a very good pitcher and not a guy that I generally want to target against. Is there anyone from Detroit here that you're keying in on?
No, I mean, Castellanos is always my favorite hitter. And if I get the Castellanos in lineups, I'm always okay with it because he's just that good. But like the only argument I could make for Detroit really is that Nola's going to have a ton of ownership. But there's just spots I'd rather go to.
Yeah, he will be very popular. And by the way, when you look at this slate as a whole, there isn't a single team now with an implied total above at 5 or higher. There were earlier in the day at 5. Now they're all at 4.9 or lower. But then we have 4 teams at 4.9. So kind of interesting here. We'll get to all of them, and let's talk another game first that doesn't have particularly high totals on either side. Scherzer against St. Louis. Miles Mikolas against Washington. I just find this to be such an interesting spot for Scherzer. I mean, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 righties, including your pitcher. Your lefties are Carpenter and Colton Wong. He strikes righties out literally like 40% going back the last several years. I mean, yes, these are some good hitters, but I don't know, man. Seeing Scherzer below 11K on DraftKings, the upside in this spot to me is just outrageous. And I was actually surprised to see that his ownership projection was lower than Jacob deGrom. Where are you at on Scherzer?
He's my top pitcher. He's my highest projected pitcher. The price tag, like you said, it's expensive, but it's not through the roof. I mean, normally we would get Scherzer at a higher price tag.
Oh yeah, he's been north of 12K on DraftKings before.
Right. And, he's cheaper than DeGrom on Yahoo, which makes it even better for me. But on DraftKings, still, I have him as my number one guy. The only thing that scares me is that, the Cardinals have a lot of good hitters, but we've seen for years now that, like you said, Scherzer is just going to strike out like almost half of the righties that he faces, and he's going to face 7 of them today. So I'll take my chances there, especially on a slate where there are a bunch of aces to spread out ownership. We do have DeGrom projected higher right now, at least in DraftKings ownership. So I'm fine getting the Scherzer here. I like him a lot. Him and Nola, in my initial crunch, him and Nola both hit my exposure cap, which was, I just said it's like 60% for everyone just to get an idea where I was at. And him and Nola both hit it. So I expect them to be my two highest owned pitchers.
All right. Yeah, look, I'm with you. I was surprised to see the ownership as low as it was here, especially given his price tag being lower than I think it should be. I mean, look, anytime you put Scherzer up against 7 righties, they can be very good, but I still, he still has the advantage here. He's had a couple ugly starts this year, but it doesn't really take anything away from the fact that he could go out there and strike out 15 batters at any time, and it wouldn't surprise you. So just really like Scherzer in this spot. Also my highest projected pitcher and top pitcher on the slate. What about Washington? Michaelis, I've said this to you so many times in the past. He's just not a guy that I roster for in fantasy very rarely. Like maybe if he's facing a K-heavy team that's terrible against righties, I'll consider it. But he's a better pitcher for real life than he is for fantasy, and he hasn't really been good at either this season. But I think he's a little better than we've seen. I just still, for fantasy purposes, he is not very good.
Right. Even last year when he was good at limiting damage against him, he wasn't a high strikeout guy. And then so far this year, he's just getting absolutely blasted by lefties in particular. Even if that doesn't continue, I still see nothing to make me think he's going to suddenly start getting strikeouts. And this is a scary matchup for him. I'd much rather get to guys like Matt Adams or Juan Soto, left-handed power bats against Michaelis than roster Michaelis. Like if I go down to that, mid 7K range, I'd rather either find a little bit more money for Max Fried and his strikeout upside, or take a little bit more savings on Chase Anderson. And I mean, even he probably has a little bit higher strikeout ceiling, and he's cheaper. So it's really tough for me to get to Michaelis.
What about bats here? Any interest in Washington bats?
Soto, Adams, one-offs I'm fine with. Carter Kieboom, if you need, a relatively cheap shortstop option's fine, but nothing that's a huge priority. In terms of matchups with Michaelis, it's, you want left-handed power, and that basically is Soto and Adams.
Yeah, Soto and Adams were really the only two I had any interest in, particularly Soto, but either is fine. And like you said, Eaton doesn't profile great against a guy like Michaelis. Let's talk about Miami and Cleveland. Another guy in Corey Kluber, who, similar to Aaron Nola, struggling this season, but the results are kind of weird, right? If you look at Kluber, he's walking batters above 10%, which is really crazy. He's missing less bats out of the strike zone, getting less called strikes. You could go on here. There's a lot that you could really look into. But he's got a 363 BABIP, a strand rate at 64%. Like there are some things that suggest or signal some positive regression, and his swinging strike rate is actually higher than it was last year. Look, he's always started really slow too. It's tough to look at that and really quantify it going forward, but every April he has been worse. Like April is by far his worst month every single season for his career. I'm not too worried about Miami. I'll take my chances in a great park against a Marlins team that offers very, very little power. So you can add another guy in Kluber to the list. We're only 3 games in, and we've already talked. Well, I've already talked. I won't speak for you about 3 pitchers that I like a lot.
I like Kluber too. I have him behind Nola, DeGrom, and Scherzer, but I still. I obviously like the spot against Miami. And, going back to something you had mentioned earlier about there not being any teams on the slate that have really high implied run totals, I think that's the reason that in my initial crunches, I am actually prioritizing pitching over hitting, which normally I don't do. Normally I'm willing to take chances on some cheap pitching, but there's just so much opportunity cost at the top. And it is a slate that seems like it could very easily shake out where, an inexpensive, team in not a great spot is the one that puts up the most runs because there's no real standout spots here. So Kluber's another one where, like I said, I'm getting less of him than Scherzer, DeGrom, and Nola, but he's my 4th highest owned pitcher on DraftKings right now. On FanDuel, you get a nice $1,500 discount off of Max Scherzer. Yahoo, he is where'd it go? $52. So he's $7 less than DeGrom. He's 6 more than Nola, and the same price or 4 less than Scherzer. So it's tougher to get to him on Yahoo, I think, because like he's almost the same price as Scherzer and he's a lot more than Nola. But on DraftKings, where he's only a little bit more than Nola and he's still a lot less than Scherzer, I'm getting a decent around 15-20%.
So here's the way I see it, right? And by the way, in today's deep dive article, I said pretty much exactly what you had mentioned. I wrote up, one or two cheaper pitchers, but mentioned that I don't necessarily think you need to do that. This is one of those days where, like, if your SP2 on DraftKings or Yahoo is really bad, that could set you back a lot further than it would on other days where your bats would likely carry you through a lot of it. By the way, props to Jalen Beeks today, man. That was very, very nice performance.
2 in a row.
Yeah, he looks good. And I mean, this is something coming out. Well, I won't get into it. We don't have the time. What I will say is, I didn't see what the ownership worked out to, but Hess was projected at like 30% and Beeks was around 7%. I don't know where they landed, but that's a very easy decision to make.
Yeah, I didn't see where they ended up either. I wasn't home when Locke came, but if they held there, then yeah.
So anyway, I think with the options that we have from a pitching standpoint, Scherzer's obviously a really good play. We'll get to DeGrom, obviously a really strong play, although he's shown some weird things lately, just came off the IL. But I also don't think for a second that you can't pair Kluber and Nola as well. I'm not saying you want to do that in cash, but Kluber is the type of guy that if you and I are having this conversation, the same slate 2 months down the road, and Kluber is the same price as Max Scherzer, nobody will be surprised. Like, you know what I mean? He could easily go out and string together 5 or 6 straight 30-plus DraftKings point games, and no one's shocked by it. So
we could very easily have this slate in 2 months, and you have Scherzer, DeGrom at $12K, Kluber at $11K, and Nola at 10.5.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. And you could have Caleb Smith at $10K for all we know.
Yeah.
He's been excellent.
Which is another reason I'm prioritizing pitching, because at least on DraftKings, because they've jacked up their hitter pricing so much across the board. And then now they just have all these underpriced stud pitchers, and then expensive hitters that aren't really in that good of a spot anyway.
Exactly. Absolutely. So to me, there's so many different ways to go. Dude, Caleb Smith is going to, Lindor and Ramirez and Santana really don't strike out. Kipnis, not much either. But he's going to face a pitcher in Kluber who never swings the bat. He's going to face Roberto Perez, who has a monster K rate against lefties. He's going to face Luplow, who strikes out a ton against lefties. And then Gonzalez is right around league average. Leonis Martin is like 25-26%. So the bottom of this lineup is really favorable for Caleb Smith. It's the top of the lineup that could get him into some trouble. But I'll tell you what, man, the slider against lefties, the changeup against righties, and the fastball, which is getting like the 4th most whiffs per swing among any lefty this season, that's actually throwing it a decent amount. He might be a 3-pitch pitcher, but all 3 of these pitches have been fantastic.
Yeah, and that includes last year too. Since the start of last season, a 15.5% swinging strike percentage to righties, at least 13.5% on all 3 of his pitches. So, it's whatever he does, it gets a lot of swings and misses. And he's someone that on a lot of slates, I think very easily would be one of my top pitchers. But on this one in particular, he's like my 5th guy because I just can't get him ahead of the other 4 that we've talked about. But he is my 5th guy. Like, I would rather have Caleb Smith here than Madison Bumgarner because I don't think either one is a pitcher that we're considering in cash games. So I really couldn't care less about quote unquote safety. And in tournaments, like, I don't think there's any arguing that Madison Bumgarner has strikeout stuff even close to Caleb Smith. So I don't really care that Madison Bumgarner's pitching in San Francisco when Smith's in Miami anyway, and he has elite strikeout stuff. So similarly priced, but I have him ahead of Bumgarner, behind the other pitchers that we talked about, and behind every other pitcher that we haven't talked about. I mean, ahead of everyone.
Ahead of everyone. Yeah, me too.
Yeah,
So Scherzer, DeGrom, Nola, Kluber, Smith. But
Scherzer, Nola, DeGrom.
Oh, I wasn't
Kluber,
doing
Smith.
them in any specific order. I was just
Yeah.
naming the four that we have ahead of him. The thing is, Caleb Smith could easily finish, with top numbers today, and it wouldn't surprise anyone just because he's the fifth best pitcher. And I agree, like putting him fifth makes the most sense. Doesn't mean that he isn't still in a good enough spot. It just means that on other slates, as you pointed out, we'd probably have a lot more of him and a lot more interest.
Yep.
Yeah. And by the way, I do still think Francisco Lindor, being that he's still priced too, until his salary begins to reflect his true talent or his true value, I'm going to continue to roster Francisco Lindor, who has been better from the right side of the plate anyway. You have any interest in hitters in this game?
Yeah, so I think this is a perfect example of, if you do play across multiple slates, of being able to, it's nice. You can get exposure to a bunch of different outcomes. Like if you're playing on Yahoo, the Indians are one of the better stacks out there, because you have, you mentioned Lindor at $16. You have Jose Ramirez at $10. Santana's $14. The rest of the lineup basically is $7. So, and Caleb Smith is more expensive on Yahoo than Aaron Nola is. So by not rostering Smith, you're not really missing out on anything anyway. And you can get to a really cheap Indian stack, whereas on other sites, they're not even close to anything I'm getting to, because the hitters are more expensive. Caleb Smith is relatively cheaper than he is on Yahoo. So I would rather have Caleb Smith on those sites and then Indians bats on Yahoo.
Right. I agree. All right. Let's talk about the Mets and the Cincinnati Reds. Jacob deGrom, Anthony DeSclafani. All right. Well, you know what? I started a couple of these games off. I'll kick it over to you. DeGrom and DeSclafani, Citi Field. What do you have here? Right now, implied total for the Reds is lowest on the night at 2.9. And then for the Mets is at 4.1, which I'll get into in a second why I think that's too low. But go ahead.
Yeah, so DeGrom, like I said, he's my third favorite pitcher when we factor in price. I think when he's healthy, is still the best pitcher in baseball. I think Trevor Bauer passes him eventually, but right now I think he's the best. And it's not a bad spot. It's not a great spot. There are guys in the Cincinnati lineup that are tough to strike out, but there's nothing really that scares me here. He got hit some in his last start, his first start back from the injured list, but the chase stuff the swing and miss stuff was there. The chase percentage was high. He was averaging 96 miles an hour on his fastball, which is fine. Everything across the board seemed fine for DeGrom. So I'm not, concerned about that. The price tag is probably the lowest price point we're going to get from DeGrom the rest of the year. So I like him a lot. Like almost any other slate, he'd be my number one guy.
Yeah, I don't disagree. This is a matchup I'm usually not huge on, just because there aren't a lot of strikeouts, but he's so good anyway. And, we say it all the time, sometimes you just go with the talent, and it feels like one of those spots. But at the same time, if you're playing cash, you don't have to feel obligated, because Scherzer's not that much more expensive. He's actually cheaper on Yahoo. So, if you don't love the matchup, if you don't feel comfortable with DeGrom, I agree, by the way, that there aren't really he doesn't give you many reasons not to feel comfortable. Everything looked pretty fine in the last start, and all the damage came in one inning. But if all of that is the case, you have plenty of alternatives anyway. So I like some of these Mets bats. DeSclafani's pretty good against righties. He's not bad at all, but McNeil at the top of the lineup, Cano, Conforto, Nimmo. I actually have some interest in the Mets today, and they're going pretty unnoticed pretty much everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with you. Brandon Nimmo, 3,900 on DraftKings, stands out as a really good high upside play. DeSclafani, since the start of last season, has thrown a little over 1,000 pitches to lefties, a 233 expected ISO with a 366 expected WOBA. Brandon Nimmo has plenty of power. He's a good hitter. Conforto, obviously a good hitter. So is Robinson Cano. Conforto's price tag is elevated a little bit, but Cano is really cheap. Nimmo is really cheap. You can get to Jeff McNeil leading off if you want. So I agree with you. I think that the Mets offer some nice upside per dollar.
Yeah, and DeSclafani, when you go back to, you could take it back to the start of last season. I mean, his home run rates versus righties are really rough, and that's kind of what you're looking at, right? Home runs per 9 against lefties, 2.6. he gives up power. Now, granted, it'd be nicer if he was a great American, but Citi Field isn't terrible for lefties. I think it's pretty middle of the road. It's towards the bottom, but it is what it is, man. There's still power to be had here, and these guys aren't ridiculously expensive. At least most of them aren't. Like you mentioned, Brandon Nimmo, McNeil's not too expensive either. I like them here. Anything else in this game you want to discuss?
No.
What do you make of Atlanta and San Diego? You mentioned Max Fried, and then you have Cal Quantrill on the other side of this one. That's a hell of a name. Sounds like a motor oil, but
pretty sure his dad was a major league pitcher.
What's that?
I'm pretty sure his dad was a major league pitcher, unless there are multiple.
Paul.
Multiples. Yeah.
I think it's Paul.
Paul.
Yeah. Anyway. Well, we'll talk about Fried first. You said that you kind of liked him today.
I would like him more on other slates where there were bats that I really felt like I had to pay up for, and there weren't as many premium pitching options at the top. He has his flaws, but he also has really good stuff. One of the best curveballs in baseball, a good enough fastball, good enough changeup. He struggles with his control at times, but when he's locating, he's almost impossible to hit. The start against the Cubs early this year was one of my favorite games I watched all season, just watching him pitch. So he certainly has that kind of upside, and the price tag's not bad. It's just that, what are you really getting by saving that money and going down to him? Like, there are enough hitting options that I can fit in with those more expensive pitchers. And then at the same time, because I want those expensive pitchers, getting to Padres bats that are inexpensive and have a lot of upside is a little bit more appealing than getting to Fried. Even though I think Fried's good, he does struggle with control at times. You do have some major right-handed power in this lineup with Franmil Reyes, whose price tag is not moving. Manny Machado, who is really cheap, and now on DraftKings has third base shortstop eligibility, so he's even easier to fit in. Hunter Renfroe, has a ton of power. Will Myers is fine. It's a lineup that you get a lot of power at the top, and then you get some cheap guys towards the bottom at weaker positions like Mejia and Kinsler. So I would just rather stack the Padres than get to Fried on this particular slate. But I still like Fried as a pitcher. Like on other slates, I would like him here.
No, I get that. Even when I was writing up Padres bats today, it was more along the lines of I'm writing these guys up because they're inexpensive, and like you said, it allows you to do whatever you want with pitching. But also keep in mind, like when we say pay up for pitching, guys like Nola and Kluber you're not paying up for what you thought you'd be paying up at the beginning of May, right? But Reyes batting second, Myers leading off, Machado batting third, Renfroe cleanup. We know he hits lefties really well. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Max Fried as well, no question. But I can't overlook the value you're getting with these San Diego bats either. Now, I also think they'll be pretty popular. Our ownership projections have had them up there for most of the day. I think you're going to get a lot of ownership on them, so it's something to consider. But I also think this is a tougher matchup for Fried than most would make it out to be. So, do you want to talk about any Atlanta bats here? Because it's a watered-down lineup, but I still think you could pick and choose a couple hitters out of this lineup that make a lot of sense, especially given some of their price points.
God, that lineup sucks.
I
really like
really
Ronald Acuna, but he's not in there.
Well, yeah. I mean, you have no Acuna, you have no Donaldson. It's not that fun.
Yeah, I still like Freddie Freeman, but he's expensive. Nice lineup boost for Dansby Swanson at a reasonable price tag.
Swanson's really cheap in a couple of. I said Swanson's cheap in a couple of spots. He's actually showing off power that he's kind of breaking out from a power perspective this year. We haven't seen that before. He's hit for a lot of power. He's got 13 extra base hits through the first month of the season, so that's at least gives me a little bit of encouragement looking at it and saying, okay, well, he's actually hitting righties for some power to start off the year.
And so another way, too, to look at this Atlanta team, even though they are missing hitters that we would really like, is they're cheaper now. I mean, you can get appealing parts of this lineup against a pitcher making his major league debut who never showed great strikeout stuff in the minors. And now you can get, Brian McCann hitting sixth, Camargo at 5 for less than $4K. Swanson, like we said, batting second. Markakis is reasonably priced. So it's just it gives you at least another team where you can fit them with the good pitching that you want.
Right, exactly. Camargo's better from the right side of the plate against lefties, but he is batting fifth here. You could do worse. So I don't particularly love this team as a stack, but I do think there are a couple guys that make sense, particularly Freeman. But like you said, he is expensive. Okay, Milwaukee, Colorado, Anderson, and Antonio Senzatella. So like I said a little while ago, there were four teams that were tied with the Carlos Rodon gives up so many stolen bases. He is just a free stolen base every single time you get on. Unbelievable. Sorry. It's crazy. It's crazy.
No, I said to roster on the early slate.
What'd you say?
On the early slate, I had said to roster Rodon and Jonathan Villar, and that it was fine to do in the same lineup.
Yeah, it is. I mean, he didn't steal any, but we just saw Wilkerson steal. Smith stole in the same. I mean, it's insane, and they're fouling off every single pitch. It really is crazy. But we already knew that.
I had to go.
What's that?
So I'm really glad I had to go do stuff today, and I couldn't get all of my Carlos Rodon.
We already knew how bad he was at holding runners too.
Oh yeah,
it's pretty unbelievable. Okay.
At least he doesn't have Kevin Smith back there anymore.
I know, it's McCann. You would think it'd be a little bit. You think he could stop the bleeding a bit, but that hasn't been the case. So yeah, three teams with 4.9 totals. The reason I mention this is because the Milwaukee Brewers had the highest implied total earlier in the day at 5 even, right? It dropped to 4.9 and just dropped to 4.7, interestingly enough. That's a decent little drop against Senzatella here. And the lineup that we've got for the Brewers is Kane, Thames, Moustakas, Grandal batting cleanup, Shaw, Aguiar, Gamble, Arcia, and Anderson.
The Brewers, so Senzatella is someone that I normally don't pick on all that much because he just does a good job of, getting the ball on the ground and of, not really getting blown up, especially lefties since last season, a 102 expected ISO. Righties not as good because he doesn't throw his changeup to them. And that's the pitch that really does the most damage against the lefties. But even against righties, a 184 expected ISO, 329 expected WOBA, those numbers are fine. It's the problem, and the reason that I want to pick on him on this particular slate is that Milwaukee is cheap. It's a good park, and Senzatella still doesn't miss bats. So you're going to let guys, like Travis Shaw and Aguiar at cheap price tags that have power. Yasmani Grandal at a perfectly reasonable price tag at catcher. Nobody in this lineup's above 5K, and towards the bottom, you get the cheaper guys. So it's another stack that we can fit in with expensive or good pitching. I won't even use expensive because you're right. With pitching that we actually want. And they give us a ton of upside even without Yelich in the lineup. There's still plenty of power here. So Milwaukee will be one of my higher owned stacks. Absolutely.
And I agree with you here. Senzatella, not a guy you typically want to pick on, but we've said it a bunch. There's no real clear-cut team on this slate where you're just like, man, load up on them, forget about who you're pitching, and just make sure they're in your lineup. It's not the case. I don't think Rendon's going to get through the fourth, by the way. But you have, once again, a weak catcher position, and Grandal's batting cleanup. He hits righties really well. He's at the second best lefty power park in the game. Moustakas and Thames. Travis Shaw's really cheap. Maybe he isn't having a great season, but this is just a Milwaukee team that's hard to get away from, kind of no matter what you think about Senzatella. And the biggest thing, as you pointed out, as I mentioned this afternoon, if you're not missing bats at Miller Park, generally speaking, you're going to have some rough results. But I didn't find myself as interested in Colorado against Anderson. What about you?
Neither am I for a couple of reasons. For one, Colorado is much more expensive. The guys that you really want are 5K plus. And two, Anderson has always been better against lefties than righties, strikeout wise and limiting home runs. So the guys that I really want are Nolan Arenado and Trevor Story. They're both expensive. I love getting to them as much as I can. I really like both of them on this slate or, in this matchup. But as an overall stack, one, it's tough because they're expensive. Two, if you're stacking them, you're getting guys like Blackmon, McMahon, Murphy, Tapia, potentially, like these lefties that they're good hitters, minus Tapia. But they're not in the best spot, and you're paying up for them as well. So more of a one-off spot for Story and Arenado for me.
Okay, I'm with you. I don't think we really need to spend much more time on this. I'll ask you before we move on to the next game, though. Who are your top bats from Milwaukee that you like the most here?
Shaw, Grandal, Aguilar.
Okay, agreed. And Thames has not been very good, but batting second, you could certainly do a lot worse than that. All right, Minnesota and Houston. Garrett Cole coming off a monster performance yesterday. 39 fantasy points, 7 scoreless, 1-hit innings with 11 strikeouts. Now it's Colin McHugh's turn. He is kind of just he's more so just a casualty of the depth at the position for me, Adam.
Yeah, that's exactly how I was going to word it too. I like Colin McHugh.
I think I stole that line from you a couple of years ago anyway, so that would make sense. Okay. That's how you were going to word it.
It does sound like something a really smart person would have said.
Listen,
but yeah, I mean, I like McHugh as a pitcher. I like some of the stuff he's doing this year. I like how much he's throwing his slider, but not surprisingly, when you're talking about someone that throws his slider, 47% of the time to righties and 37 to lefties, it has been better against righties in terms of swings and misses and in terms of limiting power. And now he's facing a pretty scary Minnesota lineup with, Kepler, Polanco, Rosario at the top. Still five righties in here. So he still can have success here. It's just, how do I prioritize him over everyone else on this slate? I would actually like to get the Kepler, Polanco, and Rosario against him, except they are really, really expensive. So kind of a stay away on both sides. One exception is Marwin Gonzalez batting 6th is really inexpensive. So he's someone that I could see getting to just as a value play one-off to fit in, maybe some more of the expensive stacks.
So Martin Perez has made some adjustments. His velocity has been way up. But honestly, that's probably not going to stop me today. Another reason, too, is a lot of these guys are good fastball hitters. Tyler White crushes left-handed fastballs. And even though Perez's his velocity is up, it doesn't exactly mean that the pitch has been all that much better. He's getting more misses on it, but the pitch has still been hit. And, you look at it this season, to right-handers, well, I guess it depends which one you're talking about. The two-seamer has been a little bit different. But the four-seamer, the results have not been great. A 460 WOBA, 182 ISO. And it's Houston. And guys like Altuve are priced down from where they should be. Tyler White crushes fastballs. A little struggle this year, but he's very cheap. And George Springer, of course. It's going to be hard for me to get away from Houston, even though I've mentioned that I do think Perez has made some legitimate adjustments. What are your thoughts on the Stros bats tonight?
I agree with you. He's made some adjustments, but
he hasn't
gone. Yeah. He hasn't become better than these Astros hitters.
Exactly.
And and they're really not that expensive. They're more expensive than a lot of the stacks that we've talked about, and you have to sacrifice a little bit to get there. But it's not like Arenado and Story are more expensive than Bregman and Correa.
Yeah, and Harper and Hoskins are more expensive than Altuve and Springer.
Right,
and Bregman.
Blackman. Yeah, Springer's the only guy on the team on DraftKings over 5K. They're my highest owned, quote unquote, expensive stack. They're my highest owned stack that I don't look at it and go oh, it's because they have 4 guys in their lineup at $3,500. So yeah, it's a good spot for Houston. Houston's in as good a spot as any team on this slate.
They are. Who are your top options here? Just for me, obviously all of them, but I really like Springer, Altuve, Bregman, and White. Yes, he's batting 7th, but if I'm going to be deciding between Gurriel at 5 and White at 7, just give me the guy that can actually hit for power in White all day long. What about you?
Yeah, Altuve in my dummy crunch. Altuve was my highest owned Astro, followed by Bregman, followed by Tyler White. Springer, I don't think I got to very much, probably because of the price tag and outfield depth. I didn't get to much Springer at all in my initial, but again, it's not because I don't like him. It's just because he's the only expensive guy on the team.
Right. All right.
Which means he probably will be a little bit contrarian.
Yeah, I think so too. I was surprised to see his ownership projection was lower than anticipated. But one of the reasons I was surprised by is you look at the top, it's like Bellinger's facing a lefty in San Francisco. Yelich is out of the lineup. Harper faces a lefty. Not to say I don't like Harper, but just to point out that the high-priced guys, there's not a ton of guys that I love above 5K where I really do like Springer. But you're right, the price will make a difference. San Francisco and the Dodgers, you've got Bumgarner and Hyunjin Ryu at Oracle Park. Obviously the best pitcher park in the game, but I just can't find any way to land on either of these two guys today.
No, I'm not paying more money for Ryu than for Nola.
No.
And for Bumgarner, like I said before, the park makes him maybe a little the park, and the fact he's not as likely to walk 12 guys as Caleb Smith makes him like a little bit safer, maybe. But Caleb Smith has the better strikeout stuff. It's easier for Caleb Smith to make up for a couple of earned runs than it is for Bumgarner. It's not an easy matchup for Bumgarner against the Dodgers. He's just kind of a mediocre pitcher at this point for me. If I get to little bits of him, then fine. Like I'm getting more of him than like other non-top 6 pitchers, but I'm not interested. Like I'd rather get the Dodgers bats because they're another team that is cheap for the amount of talent they have. It's not a great matchup against Bumgarner. It's a bad park, but you have really, really good hitters in this lineup. And with the exception of Bellinger, they're all pretty cheap.
Yeah. And, never been a big BVP guy, but I've always gotten a kick out of Kike Hernandez against Bumgarner because it's really ridiculous.
And he was doing it when he was a role player and Bumgarner was a star.
He was doing it when he literally only got at bats against lefties and then was yanked the moment there was not a lefty in there. Like
right.
4 or 5 years ago. You're absolutely right, dude. The numbers really are wild. And the thing is, I tried to make this point today. Like I'll mention the BVP in today's article, but I don't want to ignore the fact that he also crushes left-handed pitching throughout the entirety of his career. And Bumgarner is not missing as many righty bats as he used to at all. 9% swinging strikes. And since the start of 2017, he has a near 200 ISO against when it comes to righties. So, look, I'm not taking anything away from Bumgarner. He's still a good pitcher, but he's not impervious to getting hit by righties, and Hernandez is leading off at a pretty cheap price. I like him today quite a bit, even if you're not stacking Dodger bats.
Yeah, it's a lot easier to talk about BVP when you're talking about a really good hitter in a perfectly fine spot anyway.
Leading off.
Yeah. So, right. I mean, I'm right there with you. He's cheap. He has a ton of upside. Justin Turner's still really cheap. He hasn't been hitting well this year, but he does still have a 260 expected ISO against lefties so far, and he has plenty of track record as a really good hitter. You have some pinch hit risk lower down in the order with guys like Freeze, but they're still cheap. So, yeah, I like the Dodgers.
All right. Any interest in San Francisco bats?
I got more of them than I wanted in my initial crunch. I think they'll go away once I start changing stuff around and getting my lineups ready. I really hope. I think Ryu is good. I don't think the Giants are good. The park isn't good. The only reason I can see them getting into my lineups originally was because of how cheap they are. But I think that once I allow my stack percentages on other teams to increase, the Giants will go away.
Okay. Let's get to the last game here.
I did want to
go ahead.
No, I just wanted to mention one thing. I made a note of it and I forgot. On Yahoo specifically, going back to Colin McHugh, I actually do like him as an SP2. He's only $37 on Yahoo. That puts him like $1 more than Chase Anderson. Whereas on DraftKings, $1,400 more.
And to put it even more into context, that would make him $11 less than Caleb Smith and $15 less than Ryu. Whew, God, that's crazy. Yeah, that's pretty wild. If you are looking,
and Bumgarner's cheap there too.
He is. If we let's just take a second because we have some time to just look at Yahoo pricing for pitchers because I think they're kind of different than everywhere else today. You mentioned McHugh, and I think for very good reason. Is there anybody else here? You said Bumgarner. Anyone else that stands out as just cheaper than they should be, and not just cheaper than they should be, but actually worth rostering at that discount?
Nola is Nola is already really appealing to me, but he's even more appealing on Yahoo because he's 13 less than DeGrom, he's 10 less than Scherzer, but again, he's two less than Smith. So it's a slightly even better price for Nola on Yahoo. Mentioned Bumgarner's more valuable there. McHugh's more valuable. Anderson is less valuable on Yahoo than on DraftKings as an SP2.
Agreed. All right. And by the way, the 10K guaranteed, 2K to first today over there, $10 to enter. Still about 200 spots to go over there on Yahoo. Sponsor of the Deeper Dive. It's a new way to play daily fantasy sports, man. A good way. Angels, Toronto, Felix Pena, and they're doing it again. I missed it.
Yeah.
I missed it. You sons of bitch, I missed it.
I think it just happened too. Like I just saw it change.
I missed it. And you know the funny thing is we really liked him a lot last time, and then we're like, oh, he's long relief, maybe not. And he had a great start or a great outing. 8 strikeouts in 5 innings. Listen, a different slate could have me having a totally different opinion on him. He's throwing the 4-seamer more this year, the 2-seamer less, which obviously, as we know, is good for fantasy purposes. He's throwing the changeup 20% of the time against lefties, getting a lot of whiffs, good results on it. He has the slider that's always really gotten pretty solid results against righties. I like what Pena's doing. What I don't like is that he's thrown more than 78 pitches once all season.
Yeah, and I just don't think that I need to get to him on this slate either.
You don't. You absolutely don't.
Yeah, I'd rather take the upside from Fried or get the Chase Anderson, I think. I disagreed with Josh this morning, and after making lineups, I don't disagree quite as much on Toronto bats. I still don't love them, but they're another cheap team that does have some power. I had said this morning, and I still stand by it, that I do really like the mini stack of Randall Grichuk, Smoke, and Vlad Guerrero. Grichuk, I think, is one of the top values on the slate. Tons of power, really cheap. But I mean, also just getting the guys like McKinney and Hernandez towards the bottom. Danny Jansen gives you a cheap catching option. They're another team that you can get a lot of and do whatever you want with pitching.
Okay. What about Angels bats against Stroman? Or I'm assuming Stroman's not on your radar at this price. He's having a great season. When he's healthy, he's good.
Yeah, he's a good pitcher, and hopefully the strikeout stuff ticks up a little bit. I really think his lack of strikeouts is nothing more than him not caring about getting strikeouts. If he had a pitching coach say, look, it's better for you to get strikeouts than ground balls, I think he would immediately get a lot more. But I just have no need to go there against the Angels team that doesn't strike out at a price point that is similar to Aaron Nola. He's 39 on Yahoo, so that's a little bit more appealing. I don't think that he's any worse than Addison Bumgarner is at the same price point. But on DraftKings as an SP2, I have no interest.
Any bats here against him?
No, I mean, Mike Trout's Mike Trout, but
yeah, I guess we need to say that just in case. All right, we'll do our stacks here, but wanted to let you know I've been getting some DMs asking, what are your monthly prices at awesemo.com. Well, you get 50% off of the monthly price. There's different packages too. There's different subscriptions you could check out depending on what you want to play. But no matter what you do, if you sign up for a month subscription, use the promo code Deeper Dive, one word, and you'll get 50% off your first month, half off the top of your first month at awesemo.com subscription. All of our premium content, from the projections to the ownership projections to articles and basically everything for every sport that DraftKings, FanDuel, and Yahoo has to offer. We cover it, including golf and MMA and NASCAR. It's there. Plus the Fantasy Cruncher add-on, the lineup builder, and Alex Baker, Awesemo himself. You know who he is. All of his content, his projections, his rankings. You can find it on awesemo.com by simply using the promo code Deeper Dive when you sign up. You get 50% off. And say what's up in the premium Slack chat when you do. We'd be happy to let you know what's up. All right, Adam, top stacks. Not really a huge top stack night, but we got to do it anyway. What do you got?
Yeah, none of them feel real good to say, but San Diego, Milwaukee, Houston, Dodgers, Braves, Phillies, if you can find the money somehow.
Yeah, it's kind of tough. I want to throw Mets lefties in there, man. I think they're going very much overlooked today. All right. I guess that'll do it for us, huh? We got the Live Before Lock show coming up next. They're going to take you up till 7:05 Eastern time. And Adam and I will be back with you tomorrow on the Deeper Dive. How many games we got tomorrow? Thursday? Let's see here. 1, 2.
Hopefully like 3.
Oh, you would be wrong. The answer is 2.
No way.
Yeah, we do. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 games from noon till 4 p.m. and then an 8 p.m. game and a 10 p.m. game. That's it.
Huh.
That's it.
All right.
I don't know if we'll have a show tomorrow, to be honest with you. We'll see.
Yeah, I guess I probably should write the deep dive tonight for the early slate.
Yeah, probably. Unless you want to cop out, half-ass it, and write a 2 game.
I'm gonna nail these 2 games.
You got David Price and TBD, and then Aaron Sanchez and Tyler Skaggs. I guess you could go Price against the White Sox, Skaggs against the Blue Jays. I mean, it's going to be brutal. So, yeah, you're going to have to do an early slate one for that.
Yeah.
What sucks is it starts at noon Eastern time.
Yeah, I guess no bar in my future tonight.
Yeah, it just depends how much you're going to drink.
Yeah.
All right. Anyway, good luck tonight. Hey, before you head out, hit us with a thumbs up if you like the video and want to see more. We greatly appreciate it, and it helps us a lot. Subscribe and hit the notification bell so you always know when new content's going to drop next. Until next time, we'll see you back here on the Deeper Dive. Good luck tonight.